Hello, everyone. Today we'll be talking to Luisanna Cabrera, who is the CEO and founder of Makeup by Luisanna. In this conversation, we'll talk about the jump that Luisanna made from her banking job to being a full-time certified makeup artist and living her dream life. Tune in to hear more about her story. Thank you so much, Luisanna, for being on this podcast. I appreciate you taking your time out to talk with me about your story, and I can't wait to get into it. So, with that being said, we'll get right into it. So, Luisanna, who are you and what do you do?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and support you. I am Luisanna Cabrera. I am a mother, a wife, and also owner of Makeup by Luisanna LLC.
All right, Luisanna. So we know that you have your own business, your own makeup business. When did you start this business?
So I've been now a makeup artist for a little bit over 10 years. I kind of got into the business just watching my mom, just growing up, watching her be the glam one in the family. She was definitely the one that everyone looked forward to, arriving at the party to see the fit, to see the makeup. She's constantly helping everybody get their stuff together. So that kind of inspired it all, 1,000%. But my mom was also the Dominican mom that was very much like enjoy your youth. So I wasn't even allowed to touch makeup. So I was probably a senior year in high school. Probably prom was the first time, and it was like the lightest beat. You know what I mean? The lightest beat possible, and I was so excited. And then after that, once I got into it, there was no looking back. So that's kind of how it started. And then it became kind of what it is and what it is now on its own, really.
Yeah. So growing up and watching your mom do her makeup, did you always want to do it? Or like, did you have like that need of wanting to do it, but you were just not allowed to do it?
Oh, 1,000%. But she just wanted, she's like, you're only a kid for so long. And of course, now I very much appreciate it because once I got into it, it was like, okay, like I saw the value in that. I'm not going to say I'll be identical to her with my own daughter. I think it's so cute to like watch her play and almost want to be like mom. But I know what she was doing and I'm grateful for that. I think it taught me its own lesson. But it wasn't even something that I'm like, okay, yeah, like I want to do makeup for everybody. It was kind of like, I want that moment at the end where she's like looking at herself and she's like, okay, like you can tell, like you just feel better, like you have your clothes on and everything comes together. I wanted that feeling. And so that's what I chased. And then when I started getting into it, it was love at first sight, for sure.
I love that. And so at first, it was something that you wanted for yourself. You wanted to recreate that feeling for yourself, and you started doing makeup for others. And so, what inspired you to start doing makeup for other people?
The transition came honestly because they would ask, and I'm like, wait, like you want me to do your makeup? And so I would practice with like my sisters and, like my friends and stuff like that. So it was a lot of doing free work for a really long time. And then when it was like outsiders asking, then I'm like, all right, like this can become lucrative. So at that point, then I started like taking classes and that kind of just like made me fall more in love with it. But the reason behind it was also like, if people are going to invest in me, then I need to invest in me. I wanted to be taken seriously. And I knew that it was going to be like a side hobby for the longest time, right? Because you grow up thinking that corporate is what's going to be your main job. And especially my parents, they come here, they've risked everything. You know what I mean? Their hopes and dreams to make sure that you have a better life. As far as like being the product of like immigrant parents and things like that. So my focus was very much like, no, what's going to make me money is me going to college and making sure I do even the trade or like the profession that my parents want, because so that everything that they've done isn't in vain. But that's exactly what I did. So I focused on school. I went to college. And then on the side, I would invest my own money into like schooling with makeup. And it was just always my side hustle for the longest time, up until last year. if I'm being completely honest, up until last year, March to be exact, was when I just took the leap of I need to, if I want this to be my main, then I have to treat it as my main
Wow, that's powerful.
for
And
sure.
so, thank you for sharing about your parents and how they had that expectation of you to live a certain life. And so, I want to dig into that a little bit more.
For
So, because
sure.
I know oftentimes, being first generation or being
Mhm.
the children of immigrants, we often are encouraged to live their dreams and live out their idea of success because hey, they came to this country
Mhm.
for you to be successful. And so often we take on their expectation as our own and we start living that life. And so can you talk a little bit more about that?
It's just the pressures that come naturally
Uh-huh.
with growing up that way, and with growing up with just parents in general that have made sacrifice of whatever kind, and then kind of have this expectation of you. And then
Yeah.
also being like the oldest, I'm one of eight, but I'm the oldest in my household, oldest girl as well in general. So it was kind of like, not only did we make these sacrifice for you, but then you're also going to be the example for those that come after you.
Uh-huh.
um I know I'm definitely going to have like different expectations in terms of like my daughter and how we're raising her and stuff like that, but I could see how the way my parents raised us was kind of like that was the only way, or it looked like the
Uh,
only way, you know what I mean?
uh-huh.
um, but I feel like everything happens for a reason, because I don't know what type of person I would have been if I didn't have that pressure. Because, like, also when you become a parent, you kind of know who your kids are already, like, personality wise, as they're growing up, like, from the minute that they start, like, with mannerisms and stuff like that, you kind of know already what they expect, what
Uh,
they need from you as a parent, but also, what kind of pressure you can apply on them. And my parents knew that if somebody needed like the fire lit under them and can take it, it would be me.
uh,
So then going to college, I think that helped me a lot. Of course, it was fun and everything, but it was the first time that I was put in an environment um outside of like the environment that I was in growing up, where everybody had the same mindset, you know what I mean? Everybody was kind of like the same economy status, you know what I mean? And so
uh-huh.
like college was really like, these are kids from like all over, you know what I mean? And then you have, it was kind of the first time that I was like, all right, like if I want to do something about my, like, I have to be the one to like to change it, you know what I mean? Like now I'm an
Uh,
adult and I can do this if I want, or I cannot do this if I want. And if I make a mistake, like I'm gonna suffer the consequences. So like
uh,
college really, even if and who knows, that was probably just the environment where that happened for me, and like maybe if I didn't go to college I would have learned that differently. It was the
uh-huh.
first place that I was like getting to know myself as an individual, and I feel like I needed that.
Mm, okay. Yeah, so in college, you were in a completely new environment, around
Hmm.
new people, you were on your own,
For
and
sure.
so you kind of realize, all right, I have autonomy over my life. I don't have to subscribe to what my parents want me to do with my life. And so was it during that time in college that you
Hmm.
realized that you were living out your parents' dreams and not necessarily your own?
1,000%. 1,000%. And because I was 2 years at UConn Avery Point, which was like the local campus based out of Groton in like my county, it was more like kind of high school where you're just going to class and you're going home. It wasn't until I
Uh-huh.
got to like on campus at Stores, UConn, where it was just like you lived there, you ate there, you went to sleep there, that it started to change like my mindset. And again, if I didn't go to college, maybe I would have learned this differently, but that was just how I was starting to change like my perspective on like, or what I wanted out of my future. It was in college.
Okay.
Hmm.
And so you still finished college,
Mhm.
and after you found a job, an office job. Am I correct
Mhm.
about that?
Mhm.
Okay. So even though you had the introduction of that realization in college,
Mhm.
just you still went through with the path that you were already on. So
Right.
can you talk a little bit about like what you got your degree in, and what was that job that you had after college, or not necessarily the job specifically, but like your
Mhm.
career after college.
My degree, I was in the school of business, so like my degree was in management, and it concentrated on entrepreneurship, which I made
Mm,
the shift towards the end because I'm like, all right, well, if I'm already paying for this, I might as well like try to take as many jumps as I can with me.
yeah.
So I concentrated on entrepreneurship, and then I was already since senior year of high school, like maybe freshman year of college, I was already had my foot in the door in terms of banking. So I was already working at a bank. I was reaping the benefits of like tuition reimbursement. So like I'm already in a position where like I have to milk this for what I can while I'm here. So
Mm,
then senior year came. I graduated college. I was also transitioning into like living with my now husband and just kind of like starting and building a life for ourselves. So it was
mhm,
kind of like I also can't make any rash decisions yet, but like patience is it's so beautiful because I'm still giving it my all on my bank job. I'm still giving it my all at school, but I'm still doing makeup on the side. Like even if I'm working 6 days and like I can do makeup one, I'm doing that so that I'm still, keeping my name out there. And like while I'm small, like I'm not gonna be small forever. So it
mhm,
just didn't stop. So we transitioned, we've moved in together. And I was still doing makeup at that point. I had an apartment with 2 bedrooms and I dedicated one room to be specific for the business. And so that kept growing and I kept growing. But then we had a goal of like purchasing a house, and so then I had to put some things on the back burner, but I was still doing makeup. Then we got the house and we were finally like, all right, you know what I mean? Like I get having goals and I get, but like I'm still miserable. So like something has to change. And I'm lucky because I had a supportive partner and things like that. And I know that's not the case for everybody, but I think I was very much to the point where like I'm gonna do it regardless of the consequences. So even if I didn't have a supportive partner, like I was gonna do it. Even if I was living at my mom's house, I was going to do it.
mm,
Um, and it wasn't until I got pregnant that I'm like, all right, now I'm gonna be a mom. And what I don't want to happen is for her to grow up watching me do something that I'm gonna be miserable at. And like, what is that
mm,
gonna teach her? So like becoming a mother was like the final, like, that's it. We're done. We're
yeah.
done here. And that's kind of like the timeline of it. And of course things happen in between. But I think becoming a mother was kind of like now there's somebody that's watching me. Like now I'm no longer watching my parents. And
Uh-huh.
so that I was like, yeah, we're done here. And we
Yeah.
we took the risk, and with the mortgage, you know what I mean, because everyone is like, oh well, the security of like me paying rent and stuff like that. I did it with having a mortgage. You know what I mean? Like I could have lost my
Uh-huh.
house.
Uh,
So accepting that what's for you is gonna be for you. And
uh-huh.
last year, coincidentally, was the most I've made money in makeup ever.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that
Hmm.
for you, Luisanna. I love this
So
so much.
more than what I
So
was making at the bank. Is that not crazy?
that's how you know you're living in alignment and you're doing what you're supposed to be
Mhm.
doing, is when you're rewarded with that type of abundance. Something
Mhm.
that you would have never even thought about or thought of happening. It happens when you're following your joy and doing what makes you happy. And so kind of going back a little bit, so you were in school,
Mhm.
you were getting this degree, you started this
Mhm.
banking job, and you mentioned that you did makeup on the side.
Mhm.
So did you always know that you wanted to do makeup full time?
It always felt like this is what I love to do, right? It was the one space that didn't feel like work to me, that genuinely felt fun. And I lived for my clients' reaction. I still do, because it's people that have never seen themselves, like enhanced like that, or because they don't know, or, whatever reason. Connecticut is also
Mhm.
not one of those spaces that is as like fashion and beauty forward as you would see like New York City and things like that. So it was kind of
Yeah.
bringing something to them that was now more accessible. Uh, but yeah, it always felt like, oh, I just wish this was what I was doing all the time. You know what I mean?
Mm,
But it was kind of like, well, is this gonna pay my bills? You know what I mean?
mm. When did you first think that you could do this as I'm sorry, before I get to
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
part,
Hmm.
so you started doing makeup in after high school,
Hmm.
correct? And then
Right.
throughout college, and you knew that you'd probably well, you were on a path to follow this career path that were
Hmm.
the expectation that came from the expectation of your parents, and
Right.
but during that whole time, you knew that you would love to do makeup full time. Is that
Right.
right?
It was that feeling like, this is the one thing that makes me happy, and this is what I know. Like, this is what makes me happy, and this is what I know I can do for a long time, and like not be miserable, right? Because
Yeah.
then you're at corporate and you're looking at your peers and you're like, I don't want to be here in 20
Yeah.
years having the same conversation with you.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just not what I want. And so then it was kind of like looking at social media. I mean, the good of it. And like,
Mhm.
if other people are doing, like, why am I not like taking the steps to at least try? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then when I closed the door on the bank, that's when like other doors open, because you don't just let go of the job, but you also almost like let go of like that energy, and then other people start to feel this new energy, and then they start reaching out like, oh, I didn't ask you before because I knew it wasn't going to work for you, or you know what I mean. But it was
Yeah.
like, I wouldn't have even asked you because I knew you had your commitment with the bank. And so when you
So
let go of that, it was like, now people are like, oh, they know she's available, they know, you know what I mean.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
you change your mindset and other people's, like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's
It
like that
definitely
saying, one door closes, many more open. It really happens that way.
That's so true. Yeah. You have to get rid of that baggage, like
Mhm.
that low vibrational energy to create
Mhm.
the space for other things to come in. And it sounds
For
like that's
sure.
what happened. When you let go of your banking job, you created there was almost like a void, and that
Mhm.
void got filled by these new opportunities. Now, let's go to the point where you decided to leave
Mhm.
your banking job. So what
Mhm.
was happening in your life? What was happening during that time where you decided, hey, I can't do this anymore. This is the last straw. I'm gonna put in my 2 weeks notice, or maybe you quit the same day.
You're
But
gonna laugh when I tell you. You're gonna laugh.
what happened?
So I became pregnant. Like I kind of mentioned before, like that was like, yeah, I'm not gonna be here much longer. I
Mhm.
became pregnant, and I promise you, Mario, I'm not even joking. I had to quit 3 times for these people to let me go. I had to quit 3 times. So the first time, I'm like, all right, like, I don't know what my life is gonna look like. I tried to tell them, like, this isn't gonna work for me because, like, now I'm stepping into like motherhood and stuff like that, and like this is becoming a little bit too much for me.
Mhm.
Low key, like, I'm quitting, and they're like, oh no, like, we'll accommodate like whatever you want. You know what I mean? We'll accommodate
Uh,
like you working at the hours that you want to work. We'll accommodate you working less hours. We'll accommodate, you know what I mean, if you need like extra coaching on things, because I
mhm.
started off in banking kind of the same way as everybody else, as like a teller. You're like in the teller banker in the actual banking center, and then I stepped into like the mortgage industry, and so like I was doing finance, trying to get people loans and stuff like that. But I also knew at that point that they needed me more than I needed them. I was the only person of color in that entire department. I was the only Spanish speaking person in that entire department. So it was
Mhm.
like, oh, she leaves, you know what I mean? Like, we're gonna have this big group of clientele we can no longer serve that are gonna go elsewhere.
Uh,
You know what I mean? And then
uh,
my story with the bank is also like compelling because the bank I was working for, they were the first to like offer me a college scholarship when I was going to college. Like they broke me a check. Then while I was I'm pretty sure it was like towards the end of my college career, right before I went into banking, I was working with this other like nonprofit organization. And so like Chelsea, the bank was also like, they sponsored like the job I was working at. So they provided us money. So it was like always keeping this connection with them, like not on
uh,
purpose. So then when I
yeah.
finally made it in and someone had made the recommendation like that I should apply and get the job, I didn't even interview. It was kind of like, you know, like, where have you been? You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And then they would like make me like, not make me, but like ask me to do like some of like their commercial or advertising and stuff. And like, I knew that they wanted the face because of like what it represented in the community and everything else.
Uh-huh.
So the first time I tried to quit, I was like, whatever, like they're trying to make it so easy for me. Like, who am I? Turn down the money. You know what I mean? So I'm working less, but I'm still miserable. And so like I reach out a few months after that and I'm like, listen, like I'm just not happy. Like I'm not making enough money. And then my manager at the time pitches it to like, well, I'm gonna if it's the money now, like I'm gonna help you make up for that, right? Like I'm gonna send you leads, and you just have to take them and like get back to them and like basically close the deal. So I'm
Uh-huh.
like, all right. Then my daughter is at that point, she's with me and I'm like working from home with a toddler, like with a baby who transitions into a toddler. And I'm like, all right, enough is enough. So finally, March of last year, I didn't even give the option to have the conversation. I literally just sent the letter, repeated it in the email, and sent it that Friday. And then the response was like, basically like, oh, it's for real this time. Like we have to
Yeah.
pick your end date and stuff like that. Like you're not even allowing anything else. And I'm like, yeah,
Wow.
it's
Wow.
tough.
That was your final straw.
That was,
Now,
mm-hmm, that was it.
so you tried to quit a few
Mm-hmm,
times and they
mm-hmm,
just made it so hard for you to leave that
mm-hmm,
place. You had all these attachments to it. You had emotional attachments to it
mm-hmm,
too with the whole scholarship, and there's
mm-hmm.
almost like a sense of like loyalty too, right, to that place.
1,000%. Thousand
And
percent. It was like you're leaving us. You know what I mean?
yeah. And
So
so you can often feel guilty too with making that decision to leave because of that. And you mentioned that so they try to make things so that you would feel better working there by giving you those leads and kind of making up for like the money
yeah, incentive for. Mm-hmm.
that you wanted to make, but you were still unhappy. Why were you so unhappy with that job?
I think in the beginning, again, I had this whole idea that like corporate was it and like finance was it. I was good at it. You know, I can do it with my eyes closed. And and my parents were so happy. You know, that I went from like being a teller to like now she like basically has her own business because you're kind of like in charge of how much money you make and there's no ceiling. And they're like, oh, they went to town on that and like telling all their
So
friends and their family, and they're like, oh, she did it, and she graduated college. And I held on to that for so long until it became to the point where like it doesn't even matter because I'm so miserable. There are days where it's wonderful, but I was also placed in that position because other people didn't want to deal with like the people that came to me, right? Because
uh-huh.
I'm Spanish, so of course naturally that drew in a lot of Spanish clients. But these are the same clients that, because of how they grew up and everything else, they're just so illiterate when it comes to banking and their finances and stuff like that. And so often I wasn't just a mortgage loan officer. I'm also like your counselor. I'm helping you, like, who's doing your taxes. So I'm doing so much more than the job is actually even paying me to do. And I
Uh-huh.
know that they wanted to keep me there because nobody else was willing to do that. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Um, so it was really great when I was helping these people achieve like their dream of owning a home and stuff like that. And then the transactions that are super simple that people come in and they're just like 1, 2, 3, already have like papers paper clipped and everything. But then the other side, like it was just so draining. Like there was times I had to stay up till 3 a.m. because I have the pressure of like this has to close on this date. And if it doesn't,
Uh,
then it's gonna be my fault. And then I'll
uh,
have to like eat everything that comes with that after. Whether it's the
uh-huh.
lawyers, whether it's the client, whether it's, you know, my underwriter, because it goes through 5 departments to like get a transaction through when it comes to financing a home. But yeah, it was that side of the business that I was just like, yeah, I can't do this. This is just, it drains everything out of me. And then it felt like I was not only giving less to my husband, but giving less to my daughter. Like I'm here,
Uh,
but I'm not all the way here. Like I'm just so
uh-huh.
tired. I just want to go to sleep. I just want it to be like nighttime so I can
Uh,
go to sleep. So,
that's right. Yeah. So
mhm,
that's really similar to my experience when I was working in corporate. Is I was so stressed in that
mhm,
job that
mhm,
I wasn't the best version of myself to me, to my family, to my dog, to my friends, because
right,
I was always so stressed about my job. It just brought out like the worst in me.
right,
And so I can kind of relate to you on that. And so you were fed up. You recognized that this job wasn't bringing out the best in you.
mhm,
You weren't being your best self at home with your family, and you just knew that you needed to make a change. And
right.
so you submitted that letter, that email to your job saying, "That's it. I'm out of here." How did your family and the people closest to you react to you finally quitting that job?
You know, it's so funny because like for the longest time when I've wanted to been make that leap and like make that decision, and like even if you just like brought it randomly into conversation, like, oh, what if I did, or you know, what would that look like? Everybody kind
Uh-huh.
of gives you this feedback of like, like you have such a good job, like your benefits, like if now you have a daughter, like think of all this, like her like insurance and stuff like that, and you work so hard to get to this point, so it was kind of like negative. And I remember when I made that decision, I was like, I'm not telling anybody, I'm just gonna do it.
Uh,
And then when I did it and I told people, it was the complete opposite, because also people like almost naturally you get a different type of like respect from people when you're no longer asking permission and you're just doing. So I
uh,
think when I told them, and it wasn't kind of like I'm doing it, it's like it's done. So like you're either
uh,
with me or you're with or you're not. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So my parents were very much like, "Oh no, like we'll support you. Like I'm sure everything will be fine. We know that you're hardworking and like you don't make decisions just to make them." And it was like, "Oh well, when I was asking you guys for your opinion, this was not the energy that you were giving me, and it wasn't just family, but like friends and stuff. Like security sounds like so attractive to people that like you don't see anything outside of that. And so when you start to make decisions where like you don't it doesn't matter what comes after, like I'll figure it out, like you'll receive that same energy from people too, like, oh no, she knows what she's doing. Like now it's that type of energy.
Uh,
So don't
and,
ask, just do.
just do. Don't
Mhm.
ask for that permission. I love
Mhm.
that message. That's so important. And for you to be able to carry that energy, that for a lot of people that takes work
Mhm.
to get to that level of confidence and self-assurance and self-esteem for you to cultivate that energy and then share it with others to where they respect it. So, how was that for you? You had this job, you decided to go for your dreams, and when that happens, you kind of have to level up yourself
Mhm.
emotionally, spiritually, mentally. So what were some of that leveling up that you needed to do for you to be successful in launching your business? Like, what
Mhm.
were some of the internal obstacles or
Yeah.
fears that
Mhm.
you realized that you needed to then overcome?
For sure. Um, I think it was the first time that I was just like letting myself feel whatever it is I needed to feel.
Mhm,
And I think being the older sibling, right, and like having all these expectations from a young age, it was very much like I felt like I was in a hamster wheel. You know what I mean? Like I would reach my goals I when I got my house and stuff like that. When I
mhm,
signed, it didn't even feel like, all right, like this is a little moment I should be like celebrating. Like I was already like, okay, well, how am I gonna make the money to like renovate? How am I gonna make the like I want a dream car, I want this. Like I never took the time to like celebrate the little accomplishments or like
mm,
just let myself feel it. It was just kind of like, all right, like what's next, what's next, what's next. And when I quit my job, it was like it gave me the time to like to cry, to like feel excited, to like be sad, to like it all kind of hit me at once.
mm,
And then after I was just like, all right, let me pick myself up and like now let's just kind of plan for what's next. It was the first time I allowed myself to like
mm,
feel that. And so after that, it was also struggling with like postpartum, which was really, really, really hard. And it was like the first time I couldn't, you can't really even control it. You know what I mean? You don't know what's happening. It's not really
mhm,
something that like in the Hispanic culture is talked about. Um, and so that played a lot of mind games with me. But once I got through that, it was very much like I already took the risk with the bank and I already put everything on the line. Like it's not going to get much worse. And I just have to now figure out like what's next. So
mm,
the same way I stopped caring about what people are going to think of me when I quit the job and like what stability I'm losing, I also stopped caring about what it would look like to put myself out there and like try to do a makeup class and like try to make some money that way and see how that goes, and if I fail I fail and then I try something else. It was the first time that I was like accepting change and whatever the outcome is, whatever the outcome is. Like I'll learn from it and it'll go really bad and I'll learn something from it, or it'll go really good and I could level up and like make it even better the next time.
mhm, mhm. Wow. So it sounded like after you quit your job, it was a really hard period of time with the postpartum and with just a lot of changes happening.
Mm-hmm.
What kept you going during that time for you to continue pushing through and starting your business?
My daughter, 1,000%. For sure. And I'm sure that would look different with everybody else, but
Mhm,
it was definitely my daughter, and just looking at her and I'm like, yeah, like you're not gonna grow up with me. Like what am I really gonna teach you if you were just watching me be miserable? You know? So it was just like it
mm,
just didn't matter. Like nothing else mattered but her,
mm.
you know.
Oh, that's
But
that's so special.
oh for sure. And then it was kind of like above all, like why would I want to do that to myself? You know?
Mhm,
I've put my family first. I've put my siblings first. I put everybody first for the longest time, and of course, naturally, my daughter. But it was really me. Now that I'm thinking about it, it was really me just not accepting that I'm gonna live any longer being that miserable for like monetary reasons.
mm,
It was just like, no, I'm not doing
mm.
it. I'm just not doing it.
Mm. Oh, wow, that's powerful. That's very powerful.
Mhm.
And you really came into yourself
Mhm.
and into your self-worth, and you weren't gonna tolerate living a life where you weren't happy
Right.
for you and for your daughter, and
Yeah.
for and for everyone that's close to you.
Right. I knew they would all benefit from it after. But yeah, I'm telling you, quitting, I'd never allowed myself to feel like, because I was just always so busy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing too, when you're just like in the corporate or whatever job it is, like you have no time to let yourself feel.
Mm, yeah. And I I think my personal take on that is I think people don't allow themselves the space to feel because they're unhappy and they don't want to face that. They want to
Hmm.
keep themselves distracted with the rat race, with the stress from the job, with whatever it is to
Not
keep
wanting to be
them.
uncomfortable. Yeah, for sure. It was the first, like, that's the perfect way to put it. Just allowing yourself to have the space to be uncomfortable, and things will really
Mhm.
change for you.
Yeah, yeah, because once you face those feelings and address them, then
Hmm.
that makes those feelings real.
Hmm.
And when you make them real, then you have to act on them. And that's what a
Right.
lot of people are afraid of
Perfect.
doing.
1,000%. You couldn't have put it better. Like once you allow yourself to get to that point, then you could like move on from it, and then like there's so much clarity after.
Mm,
There's so much clarity after.
wow. So you made that jump. You worked through the obstacles that you recognized and needed to work through. How is life now after you started your business full time?
Hmm. It's been amazing. I hardly work anywhere close to the amount of hours that I worked before, making just as much, and just like that just naturally happened with like opportunities that like presented themselves. But
Uh-huh.
also figuring out how I wanted to shift the perspective, like how other people saw my business, and like attracting the clients that I wanted to attract. And not for anything, but like I no longer do much of like prom or like quinceañeras and stuff like that because it was fun while I did it. Like that wasn't the type of clientele that I wanted to attract. I wanted like more mature or more special occasion like brides and more stuff like that. So then I shifted into like posting those clients that booked me. And so then those are the ones that are now coming to me. And so it's like also like learning to attract the things that you want coming to you. So learning
Mm,
that was really cool. And like just watching like everything that happens after, it was like I could have just been doing this, but it wasn't the time. So like
sure.
everything happens for a reason, and accepting
Uh-huh.
that whatever your plan is your plan. But
Uh-huh.
life is great now. I spend a lot more time with my daughter, and me and my husband as a couple are no longer like nervous about like making any changes. So we just recently made another change where he quit corporate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was waiting to give that to you at the end. Or
Wow, that's
towards the end.
great.
You were not
Okay.
expecting that.
I
So
was
he
not
just quit
expecting this.
last month after
Wow.
being in corporate, my God, since he was 16, and he's 32 now.
Oh, wow, it's a long
Well,
time.
he'll be 32 in May.
Mhm.
So he quit his corporate job, and we took the leap, and he's now working in the city, coming home on the weekends, like in New York City, coming
Oh,
home on the
wow.
weekends. And I don't even know what my life is going to look like next year, but
Uh-huh.
I think once you just allow things to like whatever happens and like if I don't at least try, then I'll never know. Like everything
Mm,
changes for you.
mm. Wow, I'm
So
like in shock. That's amazing. Good for him. Good for y'all. It sounds like your story inspired him to take that leap, to quit the job and to follow
mhm.
something that I'm assuming he really feels called towards doing. And it's
Completely new. Yeah, for sure. So his dad has been working like the supermarket like an industry for a really long time, and he finally got to a point where like he's opened a supermarket, expanding into other ones as well, and so it was the perfect time to kind of like have his son join him.
oh, that's amazing. Oh, it's a family business.
It's
That's
a
great.
family business. So
I love that
I
so
hope we're
much.
inspiring everybody now. So
That's
yeah,
so great.
we're just hoping for the best.
Yeah, and so you're in that unknown again right now.
Again, again,
Wow.
for sure.
Wow.
And all the
And
sacrifices that come with it, you know? When I quit,
yeah.
uh it's also so cool because for the longest time, like, or just like humans in general, like we value like just things, you know what I mean? And like this will represent like how good it's going for me right now. And I
Uh-huh.
just remember when I quit the bank, I was very sad about it. But like I just like turned in my car and I was like, you know what I mean? Not because I'm just like just in case something happens, like I don't even have this burden anymore. And then
Mm,
when Jose and so like little small things like that we've just been letting go of like through like over time. And so like Jose goes to New York and I'm like, oh my god, like now he doesn't even have a home right now, you know what I mean? Like he's literally living out of like a room at my dad's house, then he's gonna transition to like a room somewhere else with his dad.
okay.
So it's like you don't even have the comfort of home anymore, and it's just like
Yeah.
it just doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like things don't represent you as a person or like the things that make you happy. And just like I'm really, of course I love my home, but like I'm not attached to it as I once were. I'm
Mm,
not attached to things as I once was.
wow.
And that's a beautiful thing
Wow.
too.
Wow. And what caused that change in you to kind of let go a little bit of like the material or the importance on the material things?
um I think just like naturally growing as a person, but you seek like this freedom, right? When you want to leave the corporate job,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start to want that freedom with from other things. So
Mm,
like it's almost it's a small, it's like a, a domino effect. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Of course, I still like nice things, but like you're okay without it too. You know.
Yeah.
So when we're
Yeah.
making these changes and stuff now, we're just like whatever. You know what I mean? If we lose,
Yeah.
like if for whatever reason we're not gonna lose. Don't get me wrong, like that would be a very special situation. But it's just like it's just things. It's just
Yeah.
things. And I think as humans naturally you want comfort. But I think once you allow yourself to like be uncomfortable and like it's okay to not have those things, you almost allow bigger things to come later.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
mhm,
If that
mhm.
if that makes sense.
That makes complete sense to me. Yeah, you kinda exercise that muscle of, like, of being in the unknown, being in that uncertainty, like, once you do it once, you start to develop that muscle, and you gain
Mhm.
that trust and that confidence that, "Hey, I don't know what's gonna happen at the end of this, but it's gonna be better than where I'm at right now." And you
Right.
start to exercise that,
Mhm.
and then in doing that, you get more and more aligned to what you're meant to do in this life, to your
Exactly.
happiness, to your joy, and from that place you realize, hey, I don't need to have all these things because you already
Mhm.
have that sense of fulfillment already. And that's really what matters. As long as you're doing what you love and you
Mhm.
feel fulfilled and aligned, you don't depend on the external material things for happiness as much.
Mhm.
And I think maybe that's the
That's exactly what I wanted to say, and like this is why I love talking to you because you know what I'm trying to tell you. You know exactly what I'm trying to tell you, and like, of course, I've in a long term relationship. We just February 22nd, we made it to 15 years. I mean,
wow.
I was 14 when I met him, which is
Wow.
so rare to see now. To like see people like really stick it out and like
Uh-huh.
watch and help each other grow. So also when he left, like home didn't feel like wasn't feeling like home anymore. And it just
Uh,
shows you that like it's not the four walls, it's like the people that you're with. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So that also
yeah.
played a part in that for sure.
Wow. Wow. It's like you get that clarity. I know you mentioned that before,
Mhm.
but you just get the clarity on life, what really matters, what's really
Mhm.
important.
For sure.
Wow. Well, good luck to Jose on his endeavor.
Hmm.
I know it's gonna lead to success. It's gonna be good. And everything happens for a reason in the timeline that it's meant to happen.
Yeah.
Because maybe you 5 years ago, maybe wouldn't be so supportive of him just leaving
Mm-hmm.
and doing this new thing. But after you experienced it and having him witnessed it too, the success or the abundance that happens after
Mm-hmm.
you take a risk like that, I think I think everything just happens perfectly in the way that it needs to. And now he's off on his entrepreneurial
Mm-hmm.
journey, and I can't wait to see what happens.
No, for sure. I'm very excited of what the future holds. But yeah, just believe in yourself. You know what I
That's
mean?
it. Yeah, and
So,
so that kind of leads me to my last question, and maybe what you just said is the answer. Maybe it's something different, but what advice would you give yourself before you made that leap to you, or what advice would you give to others who are in a situation that they're unhappy with and
mhm.
they're longing to do something else but are just not doing it. So what is one piece of advice that you would give to yourself or to that person?
Exactly that. To to believe that you can do it, because I mean, at the end, if you don't take the leap, no one will do it for you. You know what I mean? You'll
Mm,
constantly continue to get the same feedback that you've been, acquiring for all this time. You have to be the one.
mm,
It's your life, so you're the only one that can do anything about it. So for sure, take the leap of faith. Whatever happens, happens. If something goes wrong, then you have to just reevaluate. You're always forever evolving with whatever it is that you do and constantly making changes. It's the same thing with life. It's the same thing with business.
mm. Wow, perfect. I
So
love
just
that.
taking control. Just take control. Take
Take
control of your life.
control. Take control of your life. That's right.
For sure. And
I
just know
love
that
it.
you have something to offer, you know, regardless, even if you're in like a oversaturated market or want to get into one, like, we're
Mm,
all so different and we all have something to offer, and just like hold on to that. I know social media can both be encouraging and discouraging, so like try to take the good and eliminate the bad and just focus on you and like who you are as a person and what you can offer,
mhm.
and everything else will align.
Thank you so much, Luisanna, for all of your gems that you dropped today. Thank you for this conversation. I know it's going to inspire others to follow their joy, their alignment, and their fulfillment. Do you have any final words before we hop off?
No, I'm excited for you as well as you're entering your own entrepreneurial journey. And like I wish you the absolute best. I think at one point it'd be really cool for like it to be turned over on you and like you talk about like all the experiences you've gone through, because I feel like you also have a bunch of gems to drop. And you've already taken a bunch of risks. So even this new you getting out of this new position is like nothing to you. And you've entered some of these mindsets, I would say, before me.
Oh, wow. That means a lot. Thank you so much. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that.
Of course.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.